It may have had the least hype on a very busy wrestling weekend that brought major shows in the form of AEW Double or Nothing, WWE Night of Champions, and of course its own Battleground outing. But NXT might have just outdone AEW and Big Daddy WWE in the great show stakes. NXT Battleground was a roaring success and not a lot of people would have seen this coming. I know this because when we polled 26,000 of you guys before the show asking which of the 3 biggest events in the USA you were most excited about last weekend, well, the results kind of speak for themselves. Just take a look at them. Coming in first, unsurprisingly, Night of Champions, 59%. Second, Double or Nothing, 37%. Third, bottom, NXT Battleground, 4%. 4% of you were more excited for this show above the others. This is a complete pounding, and while I did expect when setting this poll up that NXT would finish below the others, I didn't think the gap would be quite this big, and I didn't think I'd actually be sitting here making this video either, because NXT, for as much as the regular viewers enjoy the product on a weekly basis, it doesn't generate a whole lot of hype. I didn't sign on to Twitter on Monday morning, get my days mixed up and see boatloads of GIFs and talk about the big matches and everything else. It just doesn't generate that kind of conversation anymore. It doesn't penetrate the zeitgeist, and you know, our numbers kind of back that up. Whenever we've ran NXT ups and downs on the channel or other forms of weekly content, it just doesn't do all that well. The viewers don't react to it. So to be sitting here talking about Battleground being the best show of a just packed weekend, it's really refreshing. And it feels good. But speaking of NXT coverage, if this is something you want to see more of, well, let us know with some data. Hit the thumbs up button, drop a little comment, share the video. Just, that's how we decide these things here. We're data informed, so let us know. But to kind of dive into the wrestling weekend itself, to kind of illustrate how much of a triumph Battleground really was, well, WWE, let's begin with the Big Daddy show, Night of Champions, Jimmy Uso tearing the bloodline asunder, one of the storyline developments of the year, a great main event there. Of course, crowning a new world heavyweight champion in the form of Seth Rollins, and other fun moments like Cody Rhodes and his gammy arm battling Brock Lesnar, Mustafa Ali versus Gunther. Lots of fun stuff on the show, very well received, a lot of buzz coming out of that main event angle in particular. For me, personally, it's very difficult to get excited about these shows because of what they are. They are literal propaganda shows. The WWE are paid $50 million a pop to run these things as part of a sports washing campaign to rehabilitate the country's image. Now, people don't like me saying that, people don't like any of us saying that, but it's the truth. That's what these shows are. So yes, some people are able to separate the art and all of this stuff. I'm not really one of them. I think that's a little bit dishonest, to be perfectly clear. And yeah, there was some great wrestling on this show, but for me, very difficult to feel good about them. Take a look at the AEW show, and Double or Nothing was a very uneven night, I think it's fair to say. Fantastic Anarchy in the Arena main event, World Championship match as well. Konosuke Takeshita's turn, very shocking indeed. Chris Statlander's back, that's sick. But there were some more awkward moments. The nature of Jamie Hayter's loss is sad in a lot of ways because she's legitimately injured, and it put a bit of a dampener on the evening, as did matches like Adam Cole versus Chris Jericho, which didn't really live up to expectations. NXT, meanwhile, had a very solid, very consistent show that just absolutely flew by with stunning highs, and that's coming from me, someone whose preferences aren't all that aligned with the weekly product. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys, the weekly NXT show often just isn't for me. I don't like the mafia men and murderers and wizards and other silly things that are positioned all over the broadcast. Yes, there's some great wrestling in between all of that, but for me, the gimmickry kind of brings it down. So it's really cool to be sitting here and just raving about Battleground because it was awesome. When you produce a show this good, no matter how many mafia men or whatever are on your weekly product, it's undeniable. And we'll go through some of the matches here. We'll go through every single one. Why not? Not in excruciating detail because this isn't like a blow-by-blow account, but just to illustrate how good a show this really was. I mean, we opened up with the North American Championship. Wes Lee defending against Joe Gacy and Tyler Bate in another fun, action-packed defense for Wes Lee. perfect popcorn opener, the kind of thing you want to warm people up, get the blood going on a show like this, and another feather in a tremendous cap of a title reign. Doesn't make any sense. What I'm trying to say is that Wesley's title reign has been very good. This was great, and he rolls on. After that, we got the Heritage Cup title match. Noam Dar, Dragon Lee. Always love watching Dragon Lee wrestle. The rules of this, with the stoppages and the rounds and everything, I'm not a huge fan. I do think it disrupts the flow a little bit. And yes, the finish here, interference, all of that stuff, Lash Legend, Jakara Jackson, whatever. There's certainly some things to pick apart, but the stuff in between was good. The action was on point. This was a strong match indeed, and I like the story as well of Dragon Lee not really knowing the rules and kind of figuring them out as he went along, being in an environment he's not all that familiar with. That's good stuff. Speaking of good stuff, after that, we had a bona fide WWE Match of the Year contender as Ilya Dragunov and Dijak killed each other in a last man standing match, so bruising, it even sounded like it hurt when Dijak was just grabbing his throat for a goozle. That sounded like most people's chops, for goodness sake. This was brutal. It was ugly, it was nasty, it was intense, it was spirited, and it was hard my SHIT. Tremendous match, loved it. Maybe the best match of the weekend, I don't know. Maybe I'm being crazy. More of a stripped back affair next as Gallus and the Creed brothers contested the tag team titles. For me, bit of a bummer. I'm a big Creed brothers guy. I want to see them win every singles match, but no complaints about the action on the show here. A bit more grindy, a bit slower, a bit more hold based, but you're always going to get flashes of excitement with the Creed brothers in the ring. And this was like just a sub 10 minute-er, perfectly fine, perfectly decent, perfectly good mid-card match to warm us up for Tiffany Stratton winning the NXT Women's Championship, winning the tournament in the best match of her young career. This told just a classic pro wrestling story. Lyra Valkyria hurt her knee on the Go Home show. She was walking in injured and she sold it really well throughout. She was hobbling, it was collapsing underneath her. She couldn't hit the majority of her offense the way she wanted to. She had to hesitate and sell and wait after hitting moves, so she couldn't capitalize on pin attempts. Tiffany targeted it, of course, as a good heel, I should say, throughout the course of this whole thing, and it was the most complete performance in WWE, at least, of either woman's career so far. Look, I think Tiffany Stratton is a grade A prospect. I think she has pay-per-view headlining potential, not just in NXT, on the main roster as well. If you look at where she was when she started and where she is now, the improvement is just intense. It's just huge. She's fantastic. She deserves the title win. She's going to have a very good run. And this was just a straight up pro wrestling story with the injured knee, the disadvantage, the selling, everything that comes with that, wrapped up really nicely in a homegrown prospect winning the belt. You cannot get much better than that. And speaking of just great stuff, how about this main event? Braun Breaker's new heel character. WWE have just struck on something with this. He is a mean, nasty prick jock, the kind of guy who just barges you into the lockers as you're walking down the schoolyard and steals your lunch money for good effect and spends it on bad things like cigarettes instead of an apple or whatever you were going to buy. And they told that story within the match as well, whereas the last one was kind of interesting with the crowd reactions. People were cheering for Mello even though he was the heel. No such problems now. Braun was a bully. He was dominating poor Carmelo Hayes for long stretches of this. He was talking trash to the crowd, being a bulldozer, just physical beast that he is. And Mello had to work from beneath for huge portions. This was about surviving. And again, it's another really straightforward old school wrestling story. Big dominant bully guy versus babyface working from underneath that has worked for decades. These are classic pro wrestling formulas that when done well just cannot fail, and it didn't fail here. A really great match for me, a big improvement on their first one, which I still liked, by the way, and it's good to see Mello retaining. He could have a really special title reign here. And Braun, maybe he could go to the main roster. That'd be nice. Anyway, to kind of wrap this whole thing up, what NXT Battleground shows me is that when you strip away the silliness, when you get rid of the murderers and the wizards and the hokey gimmicks and whatever else, NXT can be a pretty killer pro wrestling product. Yes, there are good matches on this show every week between all the other bits and bobs. Your Wesleys and Dragunovs are having great outings all the time. But when you focus primarily on that, when you have a show like this that just gets rid of all the window dressing and focuses on young, hungry, determined wrestlers on the come up, just keen to show who they are and what they're capable of with bold, brash characters, and it's a winning formula. And if every single live event was of this caliber, NXT wouldn't be being talked about as like the 4th brand or 5th brand in US wrestling. And on top of that, this show was just really easy to watch. The longest match here was the women's title match, and it was 16 minutes long. It weighed in total at 2.5 hours. Now yes, there's a lot of, it's a WWE show, it's on Peacock, so there's a lot of adverts and there's a lot of video packages and stuff like that, but if you're watching it the next day, you can skip all that stuff and you can be done in like an hour and a half. To me, that's a big bonus. I like my wrestling snappy, digestible, and not bloated. This was none of those things. This was tremendously well done across the board. It was just such an easy, accessible pro wrestling show, and it was a pro wrestling show as well. It wasn't just a gimmick show. It was a great pro wrestling show. So hey, thank you for joining me for this NXT Battleground loving. I didn't think I'd enjoy this show more than the other two this weekend, but I did. It was great stuff, and if you've not watched it already, go check it out. You know where to find it. You will not regret it. Maybe it's time to reinvest in the brand as a whole. I say that and I'll get mad about Tony Soprano guy thingy D'Angelo being interrogated for a crime he committed on national TV in an interview room. Shut up, Andy. Shut up. Battleground was good. Follow us on Twitter, if you will, at WhatCultureWWE. Follow me at Andy H. Murray. The H stands for developmental. I don't know, man. See you later.